Hello, everybody. Back for our weekly now. Glasses on because it's bright as all get out. Hopefully, you followed my last episode, my last weekly, so you can kind of watch the parallel because there's stuff going on, and I want to make sure it's clear in what's really happening. We're live on Twitch as well as YouTube, and the new PCs kicked in. YouTube fought me a little bit, but we got it done. So we're going to go through this, and this hopefully won't take too long, but if anybody has questions, please do leave them in one of the chats and I'll get to it. If you catch it after the fact, leave it in comments and I'll get back to you. I actually have a couple I responded to this morning. Of course, I've got the Bitcoin graph up here today and CoinDesk went weird. So I am using tradingview.com. If you want to follow along, I do recommend you do. With Bitcoin, the big news, the big top deal here, of course, is that Bitcoin took a crap, and I want to just talk through what it means because there's a couple of things that happened and it ties to my next topic. But in an earlier video, this was probably 3 months ago or some odd, I talked about the fact that cryptocurrency, because we've tied it to fiat largely, we now are subject to the whims of fiat need and fiat greed. What happens is that in cryptocurrency, we have this notion that, hey, I need some cash or I want to be rich, to quote the song. One of the two happens where either I desperately need the money or something else is going on. And so what we've done, unfortunately, is we've tied cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, but all of them have this to some degree. We've tied cryptocurrency to this fiat need and greed cycle. What then happens is what's referred to as over leveraging. In the stock market side, if you've ever done stock market, you know what this is. But in leveraging, the idea is simple. Take a home. If you want to buy a house, chances are you're going to take out a loan. You have a down payment that's expected of you to show intent to buy this and put a little bit of skin in the game. But ultimately, you're going to take a loan and you're expected to pay that company back over time. And then they charge you interest for the benefit of using this money. Well, what happens if you don't make payments? If you don't make payments, the house gets foreclosed. This is a simple concept, but people don't realize that it also applies in this over leveraging situation around this, crypto market. So when you go to these exchanges, and KuCoin is notorious for this, by the way, you go to the exchange and you ask for basically a loan, margin loan, to borrow other people's cryptocurrency. Certain other people have tons of it, and they make it available for this lending. And in return, they get essentially interest. They get a rate of return that's given back to them for the benefit of making their funds available. This was also then copied over to the decentralized side in terms of liquidity pools. So if you go in with your cryptocurrency and you create a liquidity pair, stablecoin in whichever token or token to token, whatever, and you give that liquidity pool available to that decent, whichever it is, swap, they then pay you. They pay you as people use that liquidity pool. It's the same concept in centralized exchanges as this whole trading and leveraging that goes on. This is a normal thing. It's a routine thing. There's nothing bad, wrong, or indifferent about this business. It's part of the way it works in connecting the dots between fiat and cryptocurrency. What people didn't realize is just how bad it really is. And hopefully what I explain, and I do encourage you to do your research about this whole business because it is quite fascinating, but hopefully what I explain will shed some light on the disruption you currently see and why I've said on at least 4 occasions, it will happen again. And it's cyclical. In the leveraging, you have a position, right? So then if I say I want to borrow money, take this example. Bitcoin at its price right now that I'm showing up over here is $21,000. Let's say that you got $5,000 to work with, but you want to borrow enough, so another 15 grand or 16 grand, 16 and a half grand to be able to buy this Bitcoin because you think that it's going to go up. That's the reason you do it. You do it because you think it's going to go up, but you don't have enough to buy it now with full leverage of your own money. So you want to borrow somebody else's money, banking on the probability that it goes up. And if you're right, so if it sounds like gambling, that's because that's essentially what it is. If you're right, you effectively can take the profits, you pay back the loan, pocket the profits, and do this again, and do this again, and do this again. Understand what was going on in 2021. A lot of people were doing this leveraging position situation, almost cussed, believe it or not, around Bitcoin mostly, but also on the other ones, but certainly it was Bitcoin that was vulnerable to this. And so they're constantly taking out these loans and loans, because Bitcoin is just climbing and climbing and climbing, constant climb. People see this green, this FOMO effect. Big players start to see that there's genuine interest in this business. They put money in it. They make their money available because they see that there's money to be made. I gave the analogy about Floyd Mayweather. And I said, why do I want to be like Floyd Mayweather, flossing the money instead of the guy who's paying him? Because the guy who's paying him is probably much richer. That's what these big players have been doing. They've been sitting off in the back, marinating in the cut, buying this up to trigger FOMO, and then they sat theirs into the exchange, made it available for loans, and then they're making profit off of you borrowing their money, and it's just funneling to them. Like, can you think of how that's, to quote a term from Eddie Griffin, that's gangsta. That I can take this, trigger FOMO, because I got so much freaking money, I can trigger FOMO over here on this Bitcoin business, and Ethereum business, and all these other ones. Trigger FOMO so more people buy in. It gets to a point where they can't afford to buy it like they want to, and they take loans, essentially, to borrow money. But I can take my money, buy this same stash, set it up for loans. Now I'm getting not only the profit over top, but I'm getting passive on the back, doing nothing other than just triggering FOMO. That's gangsta. But that's what was happening. So then at some point, we start seeing all these exchanges start to have issues. We start to see the war situation. We start to see changes of presidents. We start to see what happened in Afghanistan. We see all this disruption, and it causes nervousness. People are sketchy. They're not really sure what the heck's going on, and they're not sure what the future holds. And so they start pulling back. So now there's less people buying, number one. People that are already in are taking out because they're concerned, or like with Tesla, they just straight sell because they want to get the cash off of it. Well, that stops the FOMO effect. People now it's like, well, wait a minute. Why is this thing going down? Is this a temporary thing? Maybe it's a temporary thing. It was climbing before. At some point, as I've said, everything's going to hit that plateau. And when it hits the plateau, depending on how high it climbed, the crash is going to be that much deeper just because it has to happen. In other words, this correction was necessary. All of this was necessary because there was so much going on in 2021, many of it hopium-driven things. We had to get to some level of correction. We had to get back to some common sense. And that's where we're somewhat at now, right? So then some people didn't get out. Some people tried to keep riding the wave. And they said, you know what? It's got to recover. It'll get back up. I'm just going to let it roll. A YOLO, So then those people get so-called wrecked because what happens is at some point you're going to need to repay what you borrowed. And if you can't repay what you borrowed in your gamble, they're going to take and sell these assets in order to make the person whole. Well, whatever your difference is, you're going to need to make good on this business. So now you're talking about Bitcoin just getting sold because it has to be in order to pay back these loans to people. So that's more sells, more red, more FOMO, and then it does this business. And then that's not even accounting for the UST and the terrorist situation. That's not even accounting for the Celsius situation. That's not even accounting for the Voyager situation. That's not even accounting for the stable gain situation. That's not even accounting for the Robinhood situation. That's not counting for the Coinbase situation. That's not counting for all the laws and all of the fear-based things that were given out. And the media talking about it's a crash and a crypto crash and it's done. Crypto's done. It's a scam. It's a Ponzi. You take all this together, right? And you're creating this sentiment loss and a loss of confidence in cryptocurrency, all based on the fact that the pumps were never sustainable and people never learned. This cannot sustain. You can't keep climbing. I've said it. You can't keep climbing like that. At some point, it's going to crash. The key is you have to time that. You have to know when to get the heck out, which is why I pivoted to that strategy long ago. Don't just hold. Take profits. Kim.com, formerly of Mega, I think he's still involved, He even said the same thing, which was not the mantra of anybody back in 2021, which is that you have to transact it. This has to be transacted. Crypto was meant to be transacted. It's meant to be bought and sold and traded. It was not meant to be just held sitting there useless, because when you do that, other people are just bleeding out of the stuff. However, they're doing it. If you have cryptocurrency that you bought right now that's an alt, they probably have some sort of a yield farming or farming as a service or something behind the scenes. Guess what? That's bleeding off. That's just bleeding out, bleeding it dry. And it's never going to trust, right? So then if you just sit on it, which many of us do, because that's what you were told to do, for the vast majority of 2021 was the mantra, hold, hold, hold. And meanwhile, these big rich people back here are just bleeding off stuff because that's what they do. Or just incompetent devs that think that that's going to last forever when there's no way that it was going to. That's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with this unrealistic pump in 2021 that's now getting back to some common sense. Well, then we start to see a little bit of green climb. And this was across the board, but it was mostly around Ethereum. Ethereum was mostly around the merge upcoming, as well as the ETH2O. Buy the rumor, sell the news. It's still on track to have something released next month, and then still on track to get ETH2O at least into a full state before the end of the year. All of this is still on track. People are kind of pumping a little bit to say, this is coming, this is coming, this is coming, this is coming. The exchanges have stopped trading. You should be concerned about that. Why? Because as I said, the holding was never the right answer. Because imagine what happens if this ETH2O yet again gets jacked up or delayed. It's going to crap again. And then you're going to lose value and you can't do anything about it because it's locked in the exchange. Not your keys, not your coins. Which is why I said, keep it in your wallet and then watch whatever you need to do. You just wouldn't be able to stake into ETH2O and get whatever staking rewards. That's the give and take. To me, unless you were going to YOLO into Ethereum, which I do not want you to do, but if you were going to YOLO into Ethereum 2.0, that would be the only way you get any benefit because the staking rewards are a joke, to be quite frank. So if you only have $100, $1,000 or whatnot, and you were thinking of staking an ETH2O, I don't think it's worth it. Frankly, it's not enough to offset that risk. It's locked in the exchange, and the exchange, Coinbase themselves, as an example, said, yeah, we could file bankruptcy, going to lose your money. So why is that an okay risk? I don't know. But my stuff that's critical, I don't leave it in the exchange for that very reason. I can't trust them. I can't trust that they're not going to either fail because they're incompetent or rip me off. I can't say. We just saw with Celsius and that whole business. We don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future. And so my recommendation always had been, keep it in your wallet. If you're going to be in Ethereum, keep it in your wallet. But I still maintain, I think Ethereum is a good buy, right? Because if you had bought at the base, you're still up even now. Because Ethereum is always going to rebound because of how ubiquitous it is. It's out there. It's always going to be out there. And I think that's a good thing for everybody. So then Ethereum went down. It got to $2,000 and then it went down to roughly about $1,600. And people are freaking out. I didn't freak. I thought it was a good level set and correction and fix from the pump. I also think that some of this is based on Bitcoin's crash. I think that Ethereum is still a strong bet in my mind because I feel like Ethereum is the one that stands out amongst all of them. If you think of Bitcoin, it doesn't do anything other than a form of currency, essentially is what it does. However, because it's the backing currency for pretty much everything that we do, we depend on Bitcoin, but Ethereum has utility that Bitcoin lacks. Ethereum allows you to create things on top of it. The other alt networks then depend ultimately on the framework to some degree, go small, in order to do their applications. As I said, why go after Floyd Mayweather when I go after who's paying him? So I've always said the core tokens can never steer you wrong. And to now, they still have not, despite a temporary dip. If you had bought in at 980 when it based and sold at its peak of 2000, you made some pretty good money. If you held it for now, you're still way up from the 980. Like it can never steer you wrong. Yet I saw many of these other garbage tokens, the meme tokens, all crapped. If you look at that Pulse Doge garbage, whatever that is, it crapped. I expected it to crap. Will it recover? Maybe. Depends on the sell pressure, the buy pressure. But it was never going to be insulated from everything. They banked it off of the Pulse chain, which isn't ready yet. And I said, well, it's not ready yet. So what good is it? Because it's not ready yet. And until that's ready, sounded good, but you're just banking off that stuff. So giving it to a bunch of people actually might have harmed it because those people just sold it. Okay, well, that's why I didn't really cover it that much because I saw this as just, you're just banking on Pulse chain and Pulse chain ain't ready yet. And then Doge, and you're banking on that community, that's not doing much good because the Doge community is going to go after Doge. So I didn't see much of that token, but yet it crapped. Of course it did. Seifu crapped, Libra crapped, they all crapped. Well, Ethereum went down, but anybody who bought it base is significant up compared to what those other ones are doing. That was my point of why I still think the core tokens can never steer you wrong in this. I actually stacked up. I actually had to buy some more BNB, but I stacked up a bunch of AVAX and some Polygon and some Phantom, and I just bought across Litecoin, bought a whole bunch of stuff, and then I transferred over to one of the exchanges to buy some more Luna Classic, just to sit on it. And then I have Everstake or Ever something or other that I was going to buy into. And then I bought way more Everrise, which I'll get to here in a second. So I don't think we can say the war now is really the excuse for why things are happening. The war is playing a factor. I don't think it's playing as much a factor as been presented in the media anymore. I think what we have now is a sentiment shift. There's a loss of confidence in cryptocurrency, number one. Number two, I believe that what we're waiting for the November potential blowout in the United States. We're expecting this because we see at the state level, people are getting kicked out of office and other people who support a different agenda are coming into office. That could be good. I think that's playing a factor. We still see some green. Like even now, Ethereum's kind of going back on a recovery. So even if we do have these dumps, it's going back. It's not like the zzz that we saw before. So I think it's just a sentiment shift. I think that there's this base foundation of people who understand it's going to recover. And if you listen to my video from back in like February, I said it's going to recover. I just can't tell you when. And I can't tell you how long it'll take. That's what we're dealing with here. I will never support the idea, one, that Ethereum will go too much far past $1,000 to the point I'm on record on this video right here and now, Luther Vandross here and now. I'll say it seriously. If Ethereum goes beneath $900, so if it's $8.99, I'll do live karaoke on that next weekly. That's how confident I am that Ethereum is not going to go too much far past $1,000. If it $8.99, I'll do a live karaoke show on the YouTube channel, all nuts and bolts. You will hear me live sing the business, period. I will do that if it hits $8.99. That's how confident it won't hit $8.99 because I don't think it can. At this point, I don't think it's possible. There's too much at stake, no pun intended, with Ethereum in particular, but also with the other ones. Now, Bitcoin does play a part, and people keep saying Bitcoin's going to go down to 19,000 and 15,000, and could it? Sure, because unfortunately, a lot of institutional players could just dump off it. There could be more liquidations coming. That's possible. Like there was $100 million in liquidation recently. So it is possible. I simply think that I think it's gotten to the point that Ethereum can kind of maintain on its own to some level where even if Bitcoin does go that far, which I doubt, but if it could, I think Ethereum is going to sustain. I think Ethereum is just strong enough to sustain. I think people are going to keep buying back into it. That's my opinion. Maybe I get it wrong, but as I see the charts and as I see the movement and everything else, and this is, I believe, a 3-month graph. Here's a 3-month graph. I don't see it. I don't. Personal opinion. Well, time will tell. Time will tell if I got it wrong, but I don't see it. So now I want to brief talk about this whole Inflation Reduction Act, which doesn't really reduce inflation, but I think there's a tie into cryptocurrency that if you weren't aware, I think it's good for you to know. Just so you can understand the whole driving force behind this business of inflation reduction. Of course, inflation was not caused by the current government in the United States. Inflation was caused by the worldwide, largely led by the United States during the Trump administration, spearheaded by the COVID pandemic, where they said, we got to start basically printing money and giving it to people. That's what got us to this point. So it started before the current administration. The problem started later, or increased later, when the current administration said what was done before wasn't enough. Maybe we don't give money to people, but we still need to spend more money. And then the way we'll get it back is that we'll just bump up the taxes on the rich. And so then they also were trying to respond to the vocal minority out there who reacts to charts and graphs and certain images that say we have a climate crisis, even though there's data that supports the idea that everything in climate is cyclical, and we're currently in one of those cycles. There's this belief that we have to immediately rush to some of these things. So that spawned Inflation Reduction Act. It actually has nothing to do with solving inflation at all. There's one part that talks about the corporate tax It's not going to solve inflation at all because most businesses know how to do deductions in order to deduct those taxes. And some of them are offshore, which means you're not going to touch that money anyway. They also were trying to deal with prescription drugs. This isn't going to have anything to do with inflation at all because ultimately the cost of prescription drugs is based on demand. Demand isn't going to go anywhere. And so a lot of this was around Medicare. Well, Medicare isn't the primary source for the prescription drugs. It's a portion, but it's not the majority. The majority is coming from other prescriptions that people have. Those are not going to change. And so this won't move the needle on that one. And then the big news was the IRS hiring 80,000 whatever agents to be able to go out and enforce something, and they have to know how to use a gun and all this crazy. This is around the IRS having been saying for years, hey, we don't have enough people to do what we need to do here. And so as a result, we can't collect the taxes you think are out there. So they're backlogged even in the tax filing. In 2021, just to kind of tell you a story about this business, right? In 2021, I have business taxes, I have personal taxes, and I'm filing the stuff, and they were delayed on the business side to a somewhat of a degree, but the personal side was even worse. Well, what happened is the laws had changed where they implemented this child tax credit. The child tax credit was essentially I call it a scam, because what it was doing was giving you an advance on a refund they expect you to have. So anybody who had kids, they just said, okay, you have how many kids? Great, we'll just send you a check. And the media and the government presented it as, yep, this is another benefit for your taxpayer dollars of work, when the truth is you were getting an advance on a future refund. That's how it was presented. The problem is they implemented this business at the same time that this business under the CARES Act, this benefit over here was implemented for the Small Business Administration. The Small Business Administration required, new to the Biden administration, this form. That's a manual paper form that you have to send to the IRS. You have to mail it to them for them to look at and then print and mail you back a transcript. Well, because of this child tax credit, number one, people got upset because they didn't read that it's actually an advance. It's not a true credit. It's not giving you money. It's basically advancing you on a loan kind of deal. But because everybody who has kids got this benefit and they jumped all on it because social media told them to do so, that left less staff available to work these business things for the SBA. So then the businesses can't get this benefit that they're entitled to increase their amount of money, which would have helped them not lay people off in the first place. So under the Trump administration in 2020, that CARES Act provision didn't require this IRS business. That came because of the Biden administration. So now businesses are like, wait a minute, I already have a loan with you guys, and now you're telling me I can't get more money because of this form you require, but yet you did this child tax credit at the same time, which made it to where the IRS couldn't do the form. So the IRS had been saying well back, we're talking decades, we don't have enough staff to do this. We don't have enough staff to keep up with this. Mind you, we don't really need the IRS to do it anyway, because all the data that they collect comes from the W-2 filings and the 1099 filings and all the other filings that we do. They already have the data. So we don't really need to do a tax filing. The only reason we are required to do it is because the IRS lobbies to make it a thing. They lobby to keep people like H&R Block and everybody in the mix. So they created this work on themselves, and now they're saying, well, we just don't have enough people to keep up with what we cause. So Biden said, all right, well, fine, we'll just authorize you to get 80,000 more agents. Well, we need to pay for that too. So we'll just bump this tax rate up. That's what's happening there, is they're trying to get more people to be able to do what they already needed to do that they caused upon themselves, but they also tied it to, and oh, by the way, remember I gave guidance to these guys that we need to get around this crypto thing because we think people are ducking money in cryptocurrencies. So you need to go after them too. It's all tied together. Then there's this whole climate thing I talked about before. I've said in numerous videos, energy use is deep. It's all they care about. You keep hearing it. The mining cost is too high. It's just too high. It's killing energy. It's killing the climate and all this other stuff. This also is to talk about how to get around this expense, right? By basically applying extra tax against anybody who is contributing to these carbon emissions, which unfortunately mining, because it uses electricity, is going to do so because we're not on clean energy sources. Point is, this Inflation Reduction Act won't make a dent in inflation, What it will do is at some point, it is going to cause some harm to cryptocurrency. And it ties back to something I once said, which is that every time the current administration goes and says a thing, seems like it hurts cryptocurrency. We've seen all sorts of bizarre disruptions across the spectrum for cryptocurrency, which I believe is driven off of the kinds of things that they're doing, which is surreptitiously, like behind the scenes, sneaky. Would you rather have somebody who lies to your face or stabs you in the back? That's what we're dealing with, of people just lying to your face. And then eventually it's going to harm not just us, current generation. I mean, I'm old, right? But the future generation, they're going to be harmed by this nonsense because they can't help themselves. They don't want people to be independently wealthy. So the only way out of this hole, out of this pit, and I'm talking worldwide when I say this, the only way out of this pit is that people have to buck the trend and stop the temptation to FOMO sell. And they have to just kind of go all in. And not YOLO, I'm saying go all in, commit to, I'm going to support cryptocurrency in some form. Even if you just put a little bit here, a little bit here, you got to support it and not get freaked out when there's these red candles show up, because it's the red that's causing these to continually be a thing. FOMO, people freak out and they sell, and that's just letting them win because they'll just announce a thing knowing it'll cause FOMO and it'll dump. The leveraging is the other problem. As long as crypto's leveraged to fiat, we're going to see the same disruption because people keep triggering the red candles, which triggers FOMO, and that's the leverage, and the leverage is a sell in of itself. Will we get to that point? I don't know. I hope so, but I'm not sure at this point because, again, at least in the current administration anyway, seems like anytime any of them go and say a thing, crypto invariably goes in the red. And unfortunately, the people in there now, some of these kids that use the word JEET and all this garbage, they don't know any better. They don't understand that they're falling into the trap. They're falling into the trap of being influenced by these people, and they're not listening to level-headed conservative people that just simply say, we might have something here, man, but you got to stop FOMO reacting off the candles. Until we get there, I don't think we're going to move past it. That's my opinion. Anyhows, the last bit of not news, but just an update that I'll just share. So I had to go back to writing code, which I can write it, but I don't like it. Code sucks. But I had to go back to write code because I had to finish off our member portal for the triad, and I'm very close to getting that done. I got one ticket to do, and then that bad boy is ready to go. And that's a new member experience with a new dashboard experience, new community experience. The whole nine is in my vision, and then the launch of my cryptocurrency. So I'm very excited, getting close to doing that, because once I can get the darn thing out, it'll be insulated from all this nonsense anyway. And I'm excited to give that to my tribe members who support what we try to do and the kind of coverage we do, level-headed type coverage and everything. And then we just need to grow to people that, I'm sure there are people out there that are sensible, level-headed people that don't use the word JEET and don't use the word keck and don't use garbage. They don't like telescam. They don't even like social media. Hopefully hate text messages. People that are normal people that talk and they're educated, and they want to talk on the phone to people and imagine this. Normal people. That's who we want in the community. People that they are serious about this business. That's who we want, because I'm going to go all in to giving them the best possible experience I can. And then I want the smoke in return of the kind of feedback that pushes it forward. And I've gotten great feedback from them, and I want to give a shout out to them certainly for pushing and giving that feedback and making sure that we move it to the next level. So that's all I got for today, this week's episode. Fortunately, there's not significant going on. There's obviously the whole Coinbase fiasco, which I'm not going to cover till it gets a little bit more down in the weeds. And then the normal disruption that we see banked off some of this garbage. But that's all I got for the week. So if there's any questions, comments, feedback, please do leave them in one of our various chat forums, and I will make sure I get you an answer, or if it's after the fact, leave it in the comments box down below, and I will make sure to get you a response there. While I switch to check Twitch, but Twitch is automatically awesome. By the way, for our new Twitch subscribers, welcome, and thank you for being a Twitch subscriber. Twitch is, I can't say underrated because that's not fair. I think it's an awesome deal. I'm going more into it, and we will have a lot of stuff coming to Twitch separate from what we do on the YouTube channel here in the future. So stick with us. Trust me, I think you're going to be pretty intrigued by what I come up with, because I've got some big visions for our Twitch channel. All right. Looks like no Twitch chats. Looks like we got another follower. Welcome. Thank you. And looks like nothing in YouTube, as far as I can tell anyway. Perfect. Again, if something comes up, feel free to leave it in the comments box. Thank you for joining us here today. We'll be back at the roughly same bat time, certainly same bat channel for our next weekly. The next weekly is going to have, I want to say compelling topics, but that's not the right word. Different topics. They will be different. There will be a slightly different flow and format. I'm going to have a different style to it ever slightly. I'm tweaking one different thing now that I got my new PC in place. So I am going to dial off now. But if you have comments, please leave them in the comments box. They will be filtered because of the spam, but I will read it and then I will approve it. As long as you're respectful, I will approve it and I'll get your response. Some of them might even be read on the air on one of our next weekly episodes. See ya.